What you're looking at right now is a full stack banking application. So it has the real bank account linking, also real money transfers, real authentication, and everything was built from scratch. Guys, this is SwiftSend, and I like to call it our own version of Wise Clone. And by the end of this series, you're going to have built every single piece of it yourself. Guys, we're talking about Next.js app router, Supabase for the authentication and also the database. We have Prisma as our ORM, and we're going to make use of Plaid. Plaid is going to help us to connect to real bank accounts, and we're going to use Stripe to process transfers. And by the end of it, we are going to deploy the whole thing live to Vercel. And guys, this is not your regular to-do app, neither is this a simple crowd project. This is the kind of thing that you want to put on your portfolio and, get people's attention, people to stop scrolling. But here's what's going to make everything we're going to do here different. We're not just going to be building, we're going to be building everything with artificial intelligence. So every episode, I'm going to use Cursor as my co-pilot, and it's going to be powered by Claude AI from Anthropic, and we're going to see the exact prompts that I use for every single one. So the moment where Claude AI is going to get it right and the moment where it's going to get it wrong, and how exactly that I go on to fix it. So we're not going to have any cuts here. Everything is going to be live on the project. You're not going to see any form of magic, and you're going to experience my real workflow, the one that actually makes you faster as a developer. And here's the thing, I'm going to give you everything for free. So every Cursor prompt that is used in this entire course, the complete project blueprint with the full schema, the server actions, the Zod validation, and every episode breakdown, all is linked in the description, guys. So the full source code is also on GitHub. You want to follow along commit by commit, so compare your code and never get stuck with everything along the way. So you would need to download this before you start. So we have about 8 episodes with 50 plus features, and at the end you're going to have one production application ready live on Vercel. So whether you're going to try to level up your Next.js skills, or you want to learn how to build real financial APIs work, you're just going to see how developers actually use these AI tools on real projects. So this series was built just for you. So if you're ready, let's get started and start building out the application. Now, let's start from the absolute beginning, setting up Next.js in a Next.js application and also shadcn UI. Let's get started with Next.js. So over here in the documentation, come over to the installation guide. We want to set for, this is the command that we need to execute on our terminal. So copy this command here, and come over to the terminal, and I'm going to navigate to a directory where I would like to create this new project. So over here in this YouTube, and I'm going to paste this in and execute. So pnpm create next app at latest, and it's going to prompt us some questions. The name of the application, I'm going to go with SwiftSend, which is the name of the application, and it's asking us if we would like to use the recommended default. In this case, I would say no, I want to use a customized setting so that we can have the exact setup here. So I would say no, customize settings, and it asks us, if we would like to use TypeScript. Most of these are going to say yes. Yes for ESLint, yes for the React compiler, and I'm also going to say yes for Tailwind CSS, yes for the source directory, and yes for the app router. And I'm going to say no because I don't want to customize the default import alias. And the Next.js CLI is going to create a new Next.js application for us. And let's give this a moment. And now it is done, it's time for us to cd into the created application. We called it SwiftSend, and I'm going to open it up with Cursor. All right, so this is our Cursor application. What we have to do next is our shadcn UI setup. Let's come over to the components section, and in here we want to go over to the installation section and look for the command. We are making use of pnpm, remember, so come over here in our Next.js guide, pnpm, and copy this. So pnpm dlx shadcn at latest init, and the template here, paste this in of next. Now this is also going to prompt us, so let's give this a moment. And come on. Yeah, for the component library, I'm going to go with Radix. Now, there is no right or wrong answer here. And whatever you choose, you can customize it. I'm also going to go for Nova for the preset. So this is going to generate a component file, and in the component file we're going to see the answers that we chose, and you can always go over there to change things in case you want to change things over time. So over here you can see the style we chose, Radix Nova, and all of these settings here. So the installation is going to complete in a moment, and once we have the installation done, the next thing we're going to be doing in our project, we're not going to waste any more time, is to go over to Cursor, seeing how we currently use Cursor, but we need to set up some Cursor rules and see how we can actually use AI to speed up our development process. All right, so in this video, I'm going to talk about rules. So we're going to set up Cursor rules and docs. Now, I'm in the documentation for Cursor, and basically we know that Cursor is an AI code editor, but out of the box, it doesn't go on to know about our project convention. So it doesn't know about our tech stack. It doesn't know about our patterns. So when you ask it to write code, Cursor just goes on to guess. Now over here, we're going to set up rules, and we do this by creating a folder here in our project. I'm going to call this .cursor, not me, that is the convention. And here like this, we are going to have a rules folder. And here we're going to create the different rules that we need our application. Now I already have these rules set up. The first rule we're going to have here is this SwiftSend.mdc, which is just information about our project, what it's all about. So I'm going to paste this in here. No worries, I'm going to come over to this block formatter that you're seeing here. So now we have this. We are also going to set up other rules for our database, but this over here is just telling Cursor what our project is all about, so that Cursor always know about our project. All right, so now with that out of the way, let's create another rule for our database. So here I'm going to create a database.mdc folder file, sorry, and in here again I'm going to drop in this rules over here for Cursor. Now all these rules, please go over to the GitHub and copy the rules. The next rule that we need to set up is the frontend.mdc rule. So here we're going to have this frontend.mdc, and I'm also going to paste this in here, which is just like our coding patterns, file conventions, so that Cursor knows how to like follow our style guide. Okay, so now this format, I'm going to get rid of it. Basically, it's just like saying, hey, apply this everywhere in the description and the files that should be affected. We need to do the same cleanup for our database because we need one formatter block per file. So I'm going to also clean this up, and we also need to clean this up for the SwiftSend.mdc file. Cool. So now we have set this up. We also need to set up docs in Cursor. So over here in the settings, we need to come over to the indexing and docs, and we're going to paste in, you see here, no docs added. We need to add docs. Okay, so different files. So this next js.org/docs is just to give Cursor additional context, so that when it is searching, it can also like know where to find this documentation. All right, so now we have done for Next. We need to do the same thing for Supabase. So we're going to have our Supabase docs. We also need to have the Prisma docs. So I'm going to change this to Supabase docs like this if the name is already taken. And now I'm going to add another doc. So click here, add doc. I'm going to add the Prisma doc and enter here. So confirm, the name is taken. So Prisma docs. We also need to do the same thing for Plaid, for Stripe, and all the different documentations that we might be referencing in our application. So this is the setup for Plaid. I'm going to hit confirm, and I'm going to change the name. Next, I'm going to do the same thing for Stripe real quick. So I'm going to just copy the documentation and sync this documentation here, confirm, change the name to Stripe docs. And next is the shadcn UI documentation. So here I'm going to paste this in and also confirm. Okay, so we also need for Zod, hit confirm, change the name to Zod docs. Okay, so that's it. We have been able to set up the different documentations so that Claude is able to like make research on its own to gather more context when it is solving a problem. Now let's get into coding proper. All right, so here we have done the different setup for Cursor, the rules, and the docs. I'm going to show you a little bit about my workflow over here in Claude AI, how I was able to have this prompt and also over here where I have the blueprint for the application we are about to build. And this is how you can, combine AI agents where you can use Cloud to actually go on and get very good prompts that you can give over to Cursor, which gives you like, one step ahead. So over here, we are in setup and architecture, and it's like the goal of these, the different pages and routes, the features that should be built here, and also, very helpful, the folder structure. And this is the prompt because, now the way we build application has changed quite a bit. It's more or less like prompt engineering where we, feed the prompts to AI builds it, and we more or less like do the PM work, we review, and that's about it. So here, this is the prompt. I need you to help me set up with the foundation. This is what I have now, the .env setup, also the TS path aliases, the Prisma setup where it can help set up the different tables that we need. What else are we looking at here? The Prisma client singleton, so we'll always have one single instance of Prisma connection running, the different folder structures, and the rules to follow. Okay, so we have already copied this prompt. We are going to give it over to Cursor so that Cursor can, go on to make use of it. So over here in the Cursor IDE, these are the different rules we set up. I'm going to paste in the prompt, and if we come below, Cloud also added some rules that it should follow. So I'm gonna pretty much get rid of these rules because we have already defined the rules, right? Over here in the .cursor, we have the different rules that we have defined. So I'm gonna, actually, I think I'm gonna leave this and it doesn't hurt. And I'm just going to add the database MDC, and also I'm gonna add the front end MDC. And I'm also going to say add so that we can add references to documentation, super helpful. So the Supabase docs also add, and I'm going to point over to the Prisma docs as well, because this contains some Prisma and Supabase setup. And I'm just going to throw in this Next.js docs. It doesn't hurt in case it needs additional context. It knows where to look up. And then I'm going to forward the prompt to Cursor. Now Cursor is going to go on and read the prompt. It's going to parse it, know what we want. Now it has created these different to-dos. So 6 to-dos has been created here. And now it's going to start like creating our .env.local with all the placeholders that we need. It's going to set up the ts config.json with the path aliases for our actions, everything that we gave it is going to go on and do all of that. So I'm actually fast forwarding this because this, can go on and take some time, and I'm going to pause in between whenever we have an action that we need to react to. So let me fast forward this. And you can see it's thinking, it's going through the project and all of these at this point. It has read our project, it knows we use the source, and now it's asking us to confirm this. So it wants to install the different dependencies, so for Prisma as well as Supabase. So accept that. You can inspect all of these to know how the installation is currently going. And now it wants PNPM to have this security where it can approve the builds. So also go on and approve this. So run. It's just some PNPM security checks. Now you see it also over here. The Prisma schema contains a data source URL, which is not supported in Prisma 7. And if you intend to use Prisma 6, press button below. No worries. You see it tried to make use of Prisma 6. And because we have fed it with the documentation, it should know where to look up and update itself. So you see here, it has spotted it that Prisma 7 has some breaking changes, the connection URLs. They now go into the Prisma config.ts. So now it's going to like go through the documentation and update itself rather than, you see now it's like asking us to give it permission to fetch. So we want to give it permission to fetch. It will go on straight up to the Prisma documentation, know what's there, know what has changed, and is going to adapt itself. It's installing the .env package because Prisma 7 needs to read .env. It needs .env. So to go on and allow all this prompt, let it do its thing. I'm just fast forwarding through. And let's see. Now it seems it's done with the 6 to-dos. So Cursor has been able to like build out everything, within minutes without us writing a single line of code. Now you see we have 23 files that Cursor generated. You want to be a good engineer. You don't just want to allow AI prompts that you haven't reviewed, that you don't understand yourself. So we're going to come back and see how we can review code effectively that is being generated by AI. Now you need some expertise in development to be able to understand, that's where the trade-off comes in, your level of expertise in order to understand. Now let's spend some time and review the code that Cursor has generated before we allow it into our project. All right, so Cursor has given us lots of code. We are not just going to allow it in our project. You can see over here 23 files that has been changed. Let's start up with the local.env, and over here we have the difference that we have, environment variables that we need, so the database URL and all of these. This file is pretty much okay and straightforward. Nothing much going on here. We are going to come into the next file, so let's see what that is. The next file is the schema.prisma. Definitely we need to take a look at this. I'm going to bring this in so that we can review together. And here we have the user table. So the email is unique. Everything here is looking good for the user table. We have the different connections to account, transfer, received transfer, as well as the different Plaid items. So I think that's okay. So now let's get into the account. The account, we see the relation between the user and the account here. Each account definitely needs to have a name. And the account type here is an enum type. So let's take a look at it here. So we have savings and checking, which is okay. And where were we? We were in, I think that was over here in accounts. All right, so here. And now we have balance, default 0, currency USD. I think actually this, should be an enum because we might have different currencies. So I'm just going to leave this comment in, maybe change to, currency enum. We're going to have a look at this if we need to improve our code quality. Max is a string, transactions, and now we have the different the table for the transaction. So each transaction has an ID, account ID, account. It has a transaction type. Let's see what a transaction type looks like here. So let's go over there. Yeah, debit or credit, and you see how smart it is. There's no default. So when we create a transaction, we need to create a type. For the status, pending, completed, failed, pretty much straightforward. Description is optional. Category is also optional. That's nice. The date, the transfer ID, as well as the transfer that is linking or linked to this transaction. Now we have the transfer, and you see the sender is a user and the receiver as well is a user, which is pretty cool. And then we have the amount, the currency also here, it's just a string. I think could be an enum. So I'm also going to bring in a comment. The status, pending by default. And then we have Plaid items table. Here, the item ID is unique. I love that. And we have everything in place and the different enums. So I think we are pretty much good with this schema Prisma. Next, we have the package.json. I'm going to bring in the file. You can see here it gave this type module and the build command. So generate and build the links, the post install, which runs the Prisma generate, and the DB Studio for the Prisma Studio. Cool. That's all right. Let's check the next one. We have the Prisma config. Let's take a look at this Prisma config. So we have the imports and we already have an error for the direct URL. You can see we need to get rid of the direct URL in Prisma 7. There is no direct URL here. We need to change the URL. Rather than use database URL, we are going to make use of direct URL. This direct URL is going to bypass the connection pullers so that we have a direct connection. And I just confirm here in the env.local is there. And this direct connection is useful for migration, okay? And let's review. Now we have the Prisma singleton. You can see over here, this Prisma singleton here is making use of the database URL. We need this database URL for connection. We need the direct URL for migration and more or less like a one-time connection to bypass PG pullers, yeah. Now we have the client.ts for the Supabase client, so the browser client. And this is taking in the string for the Supabase URL as well as the Supabase anon key. Let's confirm we have the anon key in our env.local. So I'm just going to copy this, come over to the env local and search. Yes, so we do have the Supabase URL as well as the anon key. Pretty much good. Now the next should be the Supabase server, and it is. Let's take a look here. Pretty much straightforward. We read the cookie from the cookie store, and we get all set all cool. So this is pretty much straightforward. Again, there's nothing to change here. And the next file we have are just placeholders for the different actions we are going to have. So we just have this use server directive, and the next one, same for the account action, same for the transaction action, and same for the transfer action. And which do we have next? Plaid actions. Yes, the same. I'm just going to bring all of these in. Now let's take a moment to take a look at this validation that we have. So in the library folder, this is built with Zod. So the schema validation for the sign-in. Over here in the sign-in, we use email and password. I'm going to change the validation to make use of a minimum length of 6 for the password. I'm also going to change the error message and update the sign up schema as well. So the sign up makes use of the first name, last name, email, and password, and we have the different types for the sign in input and sign up input. Same for the transfer.ts. We build the schema validation, pretty much okay. Receiver ID, currency is default USD, and I think everything here is good. The amount is a positive integer. It's a positive number. All right, so we also have the optional notes, and let's check what we have next in transaction. Pretty much, the same idea. We have the account ID, the amount, the enum type for the type, so the transaction type. And over here in user, so we have a user profile. A user will have an avatar URL, which is optional, and then a first name and the last name. So when the user is like creating their profile here. So let's bring all of these in. So the sidebar, placeholders, same here. The balance card, the same. And the stats card. And what else do we have? The transaction item. These are just placeholders here. And git ignore lastly. Cool. All right. So you see how we're able to like go through the different files that we got from Cursor. We don't just blindly bring in Cursor code that we don't understand. Now we're going to make sure we have all these environment variables. In the next video, we're going to be setting up Supabase into our project. So let's continue building. All right, so we have made a lot of progress, and now we're going to like create a new Supabase project so that we can have the keys to connect to our database. In case you are familiar or not familiar with Supabase, Supabase is a backend as a service, and with Supabase we can get things like authentication, storage, edge functions, PostgreSQL database, a whole lot. So in this case, we want to get a PostgreSQL database that we can connect to. So come over to the dashboard. And in your dashboard, if you don't have an account, please do go on and create one. We are going to also, or you would also need to create an organization. So I have a couple of test organizations over here. Now I'm going to be creating a new organization where this project would live. So inside this YouTube organization, I'm going to create a new project and give this project a name. So I'll go with our application name SwiftSend. And then you need a database password. So I'll generate, copy, come over to the IDE so that I can just temporarily like paste this in here as a comment. So please just, keep this securely somewhere for now. And then the defaults can remain as they are, and you can go on to create a new project. All right, so give this a little time for the Supabase service to generate this new project. It usually takes some time, but it looks like we already have this project ready to go, and we now can connect to this project. So now hit this connect here, and over here you can see you have different options. In our case, we want to look for ORMs because we are currently making use of Prisma ORM. We have our database URL. Copy the database URL, and now you have the database URL. You want to come over here and replace the value of this database URL to this, and you also have to do the same thing for the direct URL. So let's come back to the Supabase project, and I'm just going to copy this direct URL that we have over here and come over to the env and paste it right in here. All right, so the placeholders for the password, let's cut this, and I'll just also remove the comment and replace this password with the actual password over here and save this. Now we're still lacking the Supabase URL and also the Supabase anon key. Let's see how we can retrieve the Supabase anon key. So come back to your Supabase project, and I think we usually have that thing in the settings, so the project settings somewhere here. Yeah, so the API keys. And over here in API keys, we have the legacy anon key and as well as the service role API keys. So we want to copy over the anon public key. So copy over this key. and then you want to paste it over here. So I'm just going to drop this in here, and the Supabase URL Cursor is actually recommending, but just to be sure we don't have an error down the line, let's retrieve it here as well. And we want to look for, not quite sure, maybe I'll check API keys. And here it is. So copy over the project URL. We also have the anon key here. Okay, and paste it here. All right, so we have the different keys. We need to generate the migration to make sure that the changes that we have in our local, that is in our Prisma schema, is the same with what we have over there in Supabase. So for that, I'm just going to clear and run this npx prisma migrate dev so that we can run the Prisma migration and dash name, and I'll give it the name of init. So that's the name. Execute, hit enter, and wait for this to go on and run the migration. We have an error, and if I double check here, you can see cannot resolve environment variable direct URL. Now let's rename this from .env.local. Let's change the name to .env so that it might be able to like pick up the environment variable. So I'm just going to rename this and to .env, so we don't need extra setup or configuration. Now I'm going to go on and just run the migration command again and give this a moment for it to pick up the environment variables, and you see now it has picked them up. Okay, I'm just going to fast forward this so that it's a bit faster, and let's give this a moment. Now it's applying the migration, and that's the migration here, and it is done. So we can always double check our database to see if the different tables we have defined in our Prisma is now over in Supabase. So come over to the table editor here, and here you can see the different tables, which is pretty much awesome. All right, so let me just clear and let's continue. The next thing I want to do is to run the project locally so that we can have a local preview. So pnpm dev, let's have a preview, and I would come over to a new browser tab and load localhost 3000. Okay, now this is going to take some time because it's building from cache, so be patient if it takes long for you. It's building newly, not from cache, sorry, and here it is. So we have our new project on localhost 3000. So pretty much awesome. I would like us at this point to take a step back, go on and deploy the application. Normally you would deploy the application at the end, but I want us to like deploy so that whenever we make changes, we can also see our changes live as we go to test everything and make sure that each step along the way, we are actually in sync with us. All right, guys, let's get started. To deploy our application, we need to set up a GitHub repository for this new project. So come over to your GitHub. In my case, this is my GitHub repository. And over here on this plus icon, you want to click on new repository here. And it's going to bring you to the page where you can give this a name. I'm going to give the name of SwiftSend, which is the name of our application, something you use to identify the project. And I'm going to leave the visibility to public so everybody can see, and then create the repository. All right, so over here we have the setup that we can use to set things up, but no worries, I'm going to walk you through everything. Come over to your terminal here, and I'm going to clear. And we already have git init, so we don't need to reinitialize git. So we're just going to say git add dot to add everything to staging. And now we'll say git commit -m with a commit message in quotes. So I'm just going to say fit /setup like this, and then commit. Okay, so we need to provide a configuration for our username and password. So git config user.email. So you need to provide your GitHub email address here. So this is mine in my case. So this like this, and the next thing we need to do is git, I'm just going to clear this. So we're going to say git config user.name, and the name you should provide here is your GitHub username. So this is mine, and now we can go on to commit again. Let's try, and this time around it should be successful, and it is successful. Okay, so let's come over to GitHub and just see how things are. We need to push over to this remote origin. So I'm going to copy this please. And then you want to paste it in here. So let's see how does it work. We have this here. You need to authenticate yourself to know that you have the right to push here. And for that, you need to provide like your username just after the // So here you're going to have your GitHub username, and after which you're going to have a semicolon with your password, but now it's been deprecated, so we need to get a new token. So over here in GitHub, I'm going to click on settings, open it in a new tab. So I still have this page open for later. And then we want to come down to developer settings, and in developer settings we want to look for personal access token and token classic. All right, and then we want to generate a new token classic here and give this a note like this. And for the expiration, I'm also going to go for 90 days. I know there are other ways to, authenticate yourself, but for now, this is gonna work. All right, so in your case, you don't just want to check all the checkbox. You want to make sure that you are giving privilege for scopes that you actually want to give that access to. But for now, I'm just going to go and generate this token. I blurred it out, but you should see the token. To go on and copy it, come over to your project, and you want to paste it in here. Cool. So this is it. You have your username, a semicolon, the token, and after the token, you have the @ then the GitHub, and your repository. So execute. And now we're going to say git push so that we can push over there. But first we need to say git push --set upstream to origin main. So to do this and push, now if you come over back to GitHub, you're going to see that and refresh, you're going to see over here that we now have our local changes over in GitHub. We now need to make sure that Vercel is ready to handle the deployment. So let's come over to your Vercel project, add a new project here. And here you can see the name because I have this auto sync from GitHub to Vercel. So I'm going to import the project here. I've already given access. And now for the setup, our project is still much like beginning. So we don't have enough setup, but for the environment variables, we can just copy everything and paste all the environment variables that we need here. I'm just going to leave some placeholders for things like the Plaid client ID. So for the Plaid client secret. Yep. So all of these here like this. And that's pretty much all the setup that we have in the application now. We don't have any custom build setup. And now once you ascertain everything is okay, you can hit deploy. Now this is going to go on and deploy your project so that, and also give you a domain over HTTPS where you can visit and see your changes live. Okay. And just something you should have in mind. This is auto linked to your main center. You push to main, you're going to have everything here. So I did fast forward and now the deployment is done. Cool. Congratulations, you have deployed the application. Let's come over to the dashboard and see how the project is doing and also take a look at the different domain options that we have. So hit continue to desktop. And here you can see this domain, but also if you come over to the domains tab here, you're going to see the SwiftSend beta.vercel.app. This is what we have, pretty much okay. And once you visit it, you will see our get started application that we have just deployed. So congratulations, we have successfully set up GitHub, and whenever we push a change to the main branch, we're going to have this auto deployment, which is going to redeploy our application so that we can have a quick preview. The next thing we're going to work on next is the authentication part of the application. All right, so we're going to continue. Yep. We're going to continue at this point. This is where we can go on to set up authentication. All right. And here in the app, we don't have any auth files yet. So let's do that. If we come over to Cloud AI here, you're definitely going to have a link to this blueprint. You see, we just finished episode 1. But for episode 2 authentication, this is the goal. So users can sign up and sign out, sign in. And the cursor movement, the different pages and routes, the different files, and also the prompt for cursor. So what we're going to do, I'm just going to copy all of these so that I can use it to prompt Cloud here. So I'll paste it in. I want to give it another prompt here. So I'll write this prompt and say, give me a cursor prompt. So give me a cursor prompt to complete the entire of this section like this. And I say, please also include the rules. So please also include the rules for cursor to follow. So for cursor to follow, and also include any user action I need to perform in Supabase in order for this to work. Okay, so this is the prompt here. I'm going to be sending over to Claude, and Claude is going to help me and generate a very nice prompt that I can give over to Cursor. So here's a prompt. It tries to explain what we are building, and it also tries to explain like what has already been built, the different Zod schemas, okay, for the validation, everything here. That we have validation earlier, and the rules for Cursor to follow, okay. So now we have our prompt, and I think everything is looking nice here. The first name, the last name of the user to use React hook form, especially the use server action. I kind of like, you know, this prompt over here, also redirect protection and the rules. Okay, so here you see the alpha naming kebab. So these are specifically the rules that Cursor will definitely be adhering to here. And it's going to install the different shadcn UI components. So let's copy this. And now we also see like the user action. So things that we ourselves need to do in order for this to work. We need to set the site URL, set the redirect URL. Before we do this, we are going to be giving Cursor this prompt. Okay, so while it's on it, we can go over to Supabase. I'm going to paste this in here and also attach our rules that we defined. So remember, in the .cursor here, we have these 3 rules. So I'll come down here and just below rules to follow, I'm going to include at the front end MDC. Also want to include the database MDC, and lastly the SwiftSend MDC file. Okay, so we also need the docs. I'm going to say at and come over to the docs section. I want it to have a docs to Supabase, so I'm going to select the Supabase docs, and then I'm also going to select docs for Next.js. I don't think it's pretty much needed, but you never can tell, so it can get additional context. Okay, so now let's execute this prompt, and while Cursor is generating the different files here, we can come back here and let's take a look at these user actions. So now we need to enable email, and that is in the authentication section. We have the sign in/providers. We want to make sure that email is enabled, so the email provider should be enabled here. And I don't think there's any more change that we need to do here. Everything looks okay. The main length is 6. It matches with our Zod, so everything is okay over there. Now for confirm email, I don't know confirm email. Let's just keep things simple. I'm just going to disable this and save this so that things are actually easier on us while we are developing this. And that's done. Now we need to also like check the URL configuration. So copy this and make sure that the site URL is set to this. Now we currently have one Supabase project, but in reality you would have at least the development and the one in production. So this site URL, for now we're just going to leave it on localhost in localhost 3000. We can't add our Vercel URL here, at least for now. Okay, but you know, as the project grows, we can see how we can handle that. Now we have the redirect URL. We should copy this. Now for the redirect URL, you see here, we have the option to add more than one URL. So for that, we can come over to our live URL here. So the SwiftSend beta.vercel.app. And we want to come back to Supabase and add this here. Let's not forget the /callback, okay? And now we can save the URLs. Okay, so they have both been added. Let's see what next do we need to do. Disable email confirmation for dev. We have actually done this already, so we are good to go. And the last one is add production URL before episode 8. I think episode 8 is deployment, but we have already deployed the application. Yeah, so let's see how Cursor is still thinking. You know, when you prompt it well, it spends some time to think before it starts just writing code. So I'm going to fast forward through this because definitely this is going to take some time before it generates the different files that it needs to generate. So let me just speed this up. All right, so you see it's a little bit faster now and it's generating the files. And yes, I'm going to say yes, so it brings in the different shadcn UI components. You can see we have changes in the components folder. And let's give this a moment. It's also setting up like the Sonar for notification and the next team's dependencies. Okay, so now it looks like it is done, and it's now like creating the different pages of our application. Cool, this is lovely. All right, so I'm just agreeing to all these installation prompts that we have here. Actually, it's running the build, the next build. So if the build fails, yeah, the build is currently failing, and there's a resolve version error there that we are seeing. So I'm just going to allow it to run. And now it's rebuilding to verify that the application can compile. And now it has successfully built our application. And I think that's about it for Cursor. Okay, now it's updating like the changes it made. No worries, we are definitely going to be reviewing these changes in the next video. But for now, we can see the build output and everything built successfully. There's actually a known issue here that there's a type mismatch, and it says we should track it here. And that's the beautiful thing. When you give Cursor enough prompt, it can actually think, research documentation, get helpful feedback, and can give across to you. And actually this error is new. I'm just saying this now as Cursor did pick it up. But you can see this was just about 3 days ago, which is super cool that our Cursor application is up to date. It's able to make research and also notify us when there's a type mismatch or a known issue. Cool. All right. So the next thing we're going to do is to come back and we are going to spend some time to review the code generated by Cursor. Okay, so now we're going to do the review of the the different files that we have here. So let's expand this and start with the auth.ts file. Okay, so this is what we have. We have some updates to the sign up and also the sign-in schema. Let's review them together. I'm just going to bring them in here, and you can see it also like we have the first name and the last name now in the sign up schema, so which is pretty cool. I want to take a look at the password. So now the password has a minimum of 8. I want to update that to 6. So I want to keep that at 6 here. And we want to also update the sign-in so that it makes use of 6. So we're also going to update this text and say password must be at least 6 characters. So everything now in this file looks very much good and okay. Let's take a look at the next file. And this is the use server action. So this is going to work as a wrapper across our different actions, but there's something you should keep in mind. We're going to see that in a second. This is taking in the action and also the input as part of the prop. And you also see these options that we have over here, which is this use server actions options that is defined. And then we use callback to cache the function call. We set the loading state, and then we have like the result because we are awaiting this action that takes in the input. So remember again, the action comes from here. And we pass the input. Okay, so now we just check if there is no result, go on and return, else toast.success. But here where we have the result.data, we are showing a toast if there is an error. Now remember, we are doing redirect. We're going to see that in a moment. Okay, let's check next. Yeah, so over here the actions, the auth actions.ts. This is the sign up action. We use Auth to make sure that we are validating the user input. Also on the server side, we throw an error if there's something wrong, and then we destructure the different fields over here on line 20. Okay. Now we have the create client. We need to verify that this is called on the server side. So here, the Supabase server client, we're not making use of the browser client here, which is very much okay. And now we call the sign up method, pass the user email and password, and we might get an auth error. Okay, so if there's an error, we want to log it and also return. And now we create a user. Now this ID here, you see it making use of the Supabase user ID. So I'm going to drop this comment here so that we know that this ID, in reality, you might want to like use a separate ID and also create store the Supabase user ID. But for now, this is okay. But it's important you know how things are working. But you see over here, if there's an error, we are going to try an error and redirect to dashboard. This redirect is going to cause an error because when we redirect, Next.js is going to throw a special kind of error, and our use server action is going to see that as an error. But no worries, we'll fix that later. So this is all we have, and everything here is looking good. We have the sign out action. And let's continue. We have the route. This is the auth callback route over here, which is very much okay. So we create the client, also make use of the Supabase server client. We call the exchange code for session, and we redirect origin dashboard if there's an error. Otherwise, we redirect to sign in. The layout is pretty much straightforward. We have the heading, some description, and then we render children. So this is like our auth layout, something you should have in mind. This is not our global layout, it's just for auth. And that auth layout is going to have this page as the children here. We have a couple of imports, and you see the runtime error that the error that it had based on version mismatch. So that's why we have this TS expect error here with some explanation, which is good. We have our use server action, which is calling the sign in action and calls execute. Remember, we are returning execute from our use server action. Okay, and now this is all we have over here. Pretty much good and okay. And everything here works fine. I like this. Something we should check. Okay, this is the sign in. We display the errors here. And if there's a loading, we do this and link. Okay, so the sign up, it's pretty much the same as the sign in. It also has this comment here. We make use of our use server action, and we have the email and password. Let's also double check if we have the first name and the last name here. We should have it right at the top. So let's see. Yes, so we have the last name here and also the first name. The next is the global, so the root dashboard, and this is it. It's just for now going to redirect to sign in if the user is not authenticated. But if you're authenticated, it's going to show the user email and the sign out button. Pretty much minimal for now. And now the app layout, so the normal layout. And this app layouts, it just, gonna have the toast notification there. Cool. So this is all we have. We need to definitely test this out to be sure that it's working. So pnpm dev, let's come back to localhost 3000. Yes, so this is it. If you come back to the IDE and you expand, you see that we have the different pages. So in the app, the auth page and the dashboard page is in the root. So we need to visit like /dashboard. The root won't be part of the URL. Okay. And this is going to render the dashboard page and will redirect if the user is not authenticated. So we expect to be redirected for now once we try to visit this dashboard page. So let's visit the dashboard page. I'm going to come here and go over to /dashboard. Okay, so it's loading up. And we are going to be redirected to sign in, which we are. So now we are redirected to sign in. You see here, we have the dashboard, it was compiling and it was redirected. So now let's try to sign in. test@test.com. I'll just go with a 126 password. Remember, we have not created an account, so we should have like invalid credentials or invalid email or password. So now let's go over to sign up, sorry. And here, why is this blurring the screen here? I'm just going to refresh. And it's still not going. Okay, so what's going to happen? I'm going to just quit the terminal over here and still try to like refresh if it goes. All right, so it's still there, so it's not our code. What's going to happen is I'm going to copy this and open up in a new tab and just drag it back to where we had it before. So come back to the IDE and restart. So let's give this a moment for it to load up. And now we're going to try to create an account and we're going to check in Supabase. So for the first name, I'll go with my name Bright as the first name here. And the last name, I would go with code with lari as the last name. The email, test@test.com, password 126 again, and confirm password 126. Then I would hit create account. All right, so this should create our account and redirect us to the dashboard. So something went wrong. That's just like the aside I told you, the redirect throws an error, but nothing is wrong with our code. We can confirm this in Supabase. And over here, if we come over to the table editor and check the accounts table, the users table, we're going to see here that the user has the ID. Remember, that's the Supabase ID, the email, every credential is here. And if we check authentication, you would see this user created with this email, provider email, and everything is working on fine over here. Now, before we let's also test our sign out and it works. Cool. So before we wrap this up, I would like us to commit our changes and push our changes over to GitHub so that it triggers a build. So git commit -m. I'm just going to give this a commit of complete auth, something like this, and then say git push. This is going to trigger the Vercel build, and we can confirm this if we come over to the Vercel dashboard, and over in the Vercel dashboard, come over to deployments. You would see a new deployment has been triggered 9 seconds ago. Cool. We have been able to successfully build the authentication part of this project. All right, guys. So I did have a build error. So in this 3-minute video, we're going to see how we can resolve the error. You can see here it's a type error, and because it knows that we are not using that directive. So I'll paste it here in Cursor, and I would say kindly fix the Vercel, so the Vercel build error, and I want to give it references to both files. So I'm going to come over to the sign-in page.tsx, and I'm going to copy over this file and add it to chat, and I'll do the same thing for the sign-up page.ts. I'm going to copy this and add it to chat and also execute. So Cursor is going to think about it and come up with an optimal solution for this error. And it did this by removing it. Now removing the directive now leaves us with a linting error, which was the use case for the directive. So now let's tell it. Now we have lint errors in both files. Okay, so now it's going to think, okay, how can it resolve this lint error? And let's see the solution it comes up with. So it creates a new file, which is going to be a wrapper or a container around the Zod resolver. And now it replaces it. So it calls it this base Zod resolver. Okay, no worries. We're going to review it in a moment. So what's going to happen is we now have this create Zod resolver. I'm just going to bring in these changes here and the sign in, and also bring in the change and the sign up. So let's now go over to this create Zod resolver. And let's see, we also have linting errors here. Okay, and it's more about TypeScript. So I'm going to add this to chat and say we also have lint errors here. Okay, so now I expect it to do some maybe typecasting to see how it can just make TypeScript happy. And that is what it has done. So it has this as unknown as resolve like this. And we don't have any errors in both files. Cool. So what we're going to do now is to git add dot, so that we add these changes to staging, and then git commit -m, and the commit message is going to be, let's say, resolve type errors like this, and then git push, so that it pushes and triggers a new deployment. So over here in Vercel, if we come to the deployments section, you're going to see we now have a new deployment. It's building. And if we come over to the build logs here, so sorry, not that logs, if we come back to deployment and we check the build logs, we're going to see our deployment in progress. So this time around, the deployment is going to succeed. All right, guys, so the build has finally succeeded. I want us to try things out, okay? So let's come over to the Vercel live URL and try this out. But in order for this to work, we need to come to our Supabase and do the URL configuration. So I copied the URL, and over here for URL configuration, I'm quickly just going to temporarily update the site URL and save the changes here. Don't forget to remove the trailing slash. All right, so now once this has saved, we can now come in to the live URL, and let's try to visit the /dashboard route. So over here, go over to /dashboard. It should redirect us to sign in. And yes, it does. Let's try to provide the test email as well as the password. So I'm going to provide the test credentials and the 1 to 6 password and sign in. Now we should be redirected to the dashboard. Yeah, we see those notifications, very much okay. And let's try to sign out, and signing out works as well. Okay, so what we're going to do is to replace this back to localhost and save the changes. Okay, so now it's saved. We are going to go over to the next phase of building out our application. So here in Cloud AI, the next phase in building out our application is episode 3. This is just the UI. And here, the goal is to have a beautiful data-driven dashboard that feels like a real banking app. So we're going to copy all these prompts. Definitely you have access to this. And you see the features that we want here. So it's site navigation, account balance card, and all of these features that we need over here. The skeleton loading state, all of these, also the different components that Cursor would need to implement, the different server actions where it needs to fetch this data. So let's copy this and give this to Cloud. And I'm going to go up so that from previous prompt, I can just quickly copy the prompt that I added. So over here, this prompt. So I'm just going to copy this, give me a Cursor prompt, and also like include all the rules for Cursor to follow. So I'll copy that and paste it here. So I'm just kind of showing you my workflow in AI development and seeing how quickly I go on to build applications using AI. And now Cursor is going to go on and generate the prompt. You can see everything is now cleanly listed. We have like what's already done, the different server action we are going to need. These are the different functions that are going to be used to fetch data from Prisma. So all these functions here, the different components, so the sidebar components, the mobile navigation, all of these over here. You just read through to make sure that everything is okay. The dashboard page, you can see how it fetches all of these in parallel. So call all 3 server actions. There's something I don't like here though. It says wrap in suspense with dashboard skeleton as fallback. I don't like this because Next.js now has the loading, Next.js 15 and Next.js 16 now has the loading, so we would not be needing that. And so let's copy this and come over to Cursor and paste in the prompt. So now don't forget that we need to like update that prompt to tell it to Next.js now has the loading state. So I just want to find where we have that command here. I think it's somewhat, yeah. So here I'm going to get rid of it and inform it that Next.js has a built-in loading.tsx to fetch to display loading state and page. Okay, and then I'm gonna add the next documentation, so next.js here, so it can read the docs. And then I'm also going to come over here and add our coding standard, so the MDC file. I'm gonna add the front end.mdc, and I'm also going to add the database.mdc in case it needs it for data fetching. And I'm going to add the docs of Prisma. So just in case, if I can tell, add the docs to Prisma, and then I will execute. So I'll just fast forward this through, let Cursor do its thing. And once it is done, we can now have a review together of the code that has been generated. So it looks like it is, it's generating the code. So it should be through any moment from now. It has run the build. It verified that the build is working, so we know that next build will pass. Now that Cursor is done, I would like us to have a preview on the UI to see what our application now looks like, and then we can come back to have a review of the code before we accept it into our code base. So now let's pm dev to start up the local server, come over to the browser and just refresh the page. At this point, I expect to be redirected to dashboard because we are already authenticated and we remain on the sign in page. So what's going to happen is let's sign in test@test.com and the password 126, and I'm going to hit sign in. But while you're signing, I'll just copy this URL because I want to see if we are navigated to the dashboard, if we can still come back to the sign in page. So I'm going to paste in the sign in page and see, and yeah, we can remain on the sign in page. So that's another bug. You can be keeping tracks of these bugs, so at the end you fix. On a real project, I would fix this as I go. So now let's test you see how everything is cleanly laid out. Let's try to visit this. We don't have the pages yet, so all the page is going to be 404. We also have like the mobile view, so let's test it out. I'm going to click on this hamburger menu. We see the slider and we have all these pages, which are still 404 pages. This is pretty awesome. I like the state of the application. Everything at this point, is coming in together. The next phase that we need to do is to definitely go through this code, ensure that the code quality is up to date, and now we can go from there. Okay guys, so now is the time for us to do a code review of the code that has been generated. So I'm just going to close all these tabs and also quit the dev server so that we can just focus quickly on this, starting with the accounts action. All right, so let's see what's going on here. We have this get accounts with balance, and here we have Prisma account.findMany. So it fetches the different accounts owned by a certain user. That's why we have the user ID, and it transforms it over here to this format. And here we have the type. So what this type is doing, especially this casting of this number that we have here, is because this gets accounts with balance is going to return a list. So this is saying just like one account, what one account looks like, that is the type. So account with balance. And then get dashboard start. So get dashboard start is using Prisma aggregate to do like a calculation, a sum, in this case, the total amount for all the, so for the transaction and also the accounts over here. So the type, debit, credit, and also the account. So then it returns an object. So we have the dashboard stats. So this get recent transaction goes on to get the different transaction, and it also maps it. So I pretty much like what's going on in this file. And over here in user action, let's bring it in. We have this get current user, which is making use of this cache from React. So it's like caching the function, which is this inner function we are passing in here. And we get the user. If there is no user, we return null. Otherwise, we return the user. Okay. Pretty much straightforward. The next is the good old utils for formatting a currency, so we can keep the file. And this is taking a default USD currency over here. So what do we have next? We have this sidebar component. This is what we had previously, this sidebar with the aside. So I'm going to accept this new. The imports are okay. We have the different navigation items. It makes use of the path name, and this path name is to know for styling purpose which path is active. So that's what is going on here. And over here we have the image. So I'm going to actually leave this image. I don't think we need to make use of next image. Users might not even have avatar in our application. And then we display the user first name, last name, and the email. So if we check the application, I think the dev server is done. So let's see if we have it on live. No, we don't. So I just wanted to show us a preview. So let's go over to the next one, the mobile navigation. Mobile navigation is pretty much like what we had for the sidebar, straightforward as well. So there's no much change going on here. We have the nav items and also user data. So for next, the balance card, just for, this displaying the user total balance. And if we come over to the statistics card, this stat is the same idea, just to display like statistics. Here it takes in these color classes and it displays the icon and goes on to format the currency. So it also displays the label. So it's a pretty much straightforward component. The transaction item, all right, so we have an error here, but let's go through it. We have the category icons. So these categories, remember, if we come over to our schema Prisma file, so I'm just going to search for our schema Prisma, you would see that each transaction has a category, which is a string. So what we're saying over here is based on these types, like a shopping, food, travel, display a certain type of icon. Okay, so we have this get category icon here, and that is the default. And then we have the different status and also an error. So no worries about this error, the way we are displaying this. So what's going to happen, I'm just going to copy this and let Cursor quickly fix this error. It's a pretty much straightforward fix for this. So I'll paste it here and also copy and paste it here as well. So it's going to know to fix the error that we have over there. Now let's continue. We have the recent transaction, which goes on to display the recent transactions. a view all link to the transactions page, and this component if there are no transaction, and this transaction item component if we do have one. And we have the linked account strip. Let's bring this in as well. If there are no accounts, currently we don't have any accounts, so we're going to be displaying this no linked accounts yet. We should go on and link an account. But if we do have accounts, we're going to map through the different accounts, display the account name. We want to max the account number, otherwise we'll display asterisks. Okay, and then we have this format currency, which formats like the balance you have in that account, and also a link to link account. We have the dashboard skeleton, nothing fancy here, so we can just go over to the next one, the layout.tsx. Now this is the root layout.tsx. We have some authorization going on here, checking if there are no current user. We redirect over to the sign-in page, making use of our use current user action. So this is a straightforward one. We also like get the user from Supabase and want to check current user. Then we have the loading.tsx from our prompt. Remember the updated prompt. Now we display the dashboard skeleton. And two more to go. We have this page, the dashboard page. So I love this. It's fetching all of these in parallel. So we just wait for the slowest one. And what else do we have? The statistics card to display the different statistics, the recent transactions, and also the linked accounts. And lastly, we have the transaction item. So Cursor has gone on to fix this, and now it does it, way more better. Cool. So now with everything fixed, npm dev, let's start our application on localhost 3000 to have a quick preview. Give this a moment, and now we are here. So we see everything laid out nice. Now we are fetching data. We are seeing the defaults. Everything is fine and everything is working on good. I would like us to go on and make sure that we have deployed, we can deploy our application. Okay. So let's make sure we can deploy the application and it's also working on live. Come back to the IDE. So I'll cancel this and go with git add to add everything to staging, and git commit -m. I would go with the commit message of feed and say dashboard -complete. So feed /dashboard complete and say git push. Now this is going to trigger a deployment. Head over to your Vercel dashboard for your project, and if you come over to deployment, you would see a new deployment is building. Super awesome. And I'm going to come back when the build is done. All right, so now we are going to build. We just completed the dashboard UI and the project built successfully. So now let's try this in live. I'm going to copy over the live URL and then head over to the URL configuration just so that we can test out the application on live. So save changes and then come back to the application once it saves. Yes, so and just hit refresh. Then we can authenticate ourselves. So I'm going to authenticate myself, just giving it a moment to build. So I'll type in the test@test.com as well as the 126 password. All right, so now we get our error, and now we are here. So we see everything is working fine and good. We have the total received, total send, and all. So now let's make sure we update the URL configuration over in Supabase so that it points back to localhost. Okay, so we are going to come back to Cloud AI, and here we have wrapped up the third episode, and now we are going to continue to the episode 4. Okay, guys, I am super excited about episode 4, and I'm going to show you why I'm so excited about this. Okay, and that's due to episode 5. So over here, if you scroll down, you will see the bank linking with Plaid. So this is where all the fun begins. Episode 5, episode 6, where we can do the transfer, the transaction. I'm super excited, to dive into those episodes. So we are going to be on episode 4 for now. So let's try to wrap it up quickly. And what's the goal of episode 4? And the goal is for a full filterable transaction history where you can learn, server components, data fetching, and also Prisma queries. And this is the page. So the transaction page is the page that is going to be built. So I'm going to copy everything here And for the features, you can see the full paginated transaction, filter by type, filter by date range, search by description or amount, or, and we have all of these. And the reason why I emphasize on that or is because, we should watch out for it. Okay, so we have this, the result schema and the prompt. So copy this, let's feed it to Cloud, and then I'm going to scroll up to the previous prompt. And in the previous prompt where we had to give it another additional prompt. So I'm going to copy this, give me a cursor prompt, complete the entire section, and also add the rules for cursor to follow. That's it, execute, and let Claude AI generate the prompt that cursor would need. So here is it. It always adds like the description, and then what we have already built, and the result schema for the transaction filter schema. And now we have the action. Oops. So here we have the server action. You can see we have filter by where the account is equal to user ID. The type is equal to null. That's if type is there. And we also have search. So if search is included, we want to spread. And you see the or there. So it's either filter by description or amount. And also keep track of this mode that is insensitive. It's important that you know what's going on in your application. So all of these are okay for me. And then we have the date from, the date to, that is if they are provided, it attaches them to the query. And then we have the client component where all this filtration is going to happen. So where the user can, have the tabs by all, sent, received. So specific transaction. We have the loading skeleton, and we have the transaction page itself and the rules for cursor. So I'm going to copy this and head over to the IDE. And then I would paste it here. Okay, as usual, we want to add our own internal docs. So here I would say add front-end MDC and also add database.mdc. So it knows how to, make use of the queries. And then I'll also add docs for Prisma, just in case, it needs some queries that could be a little bit complex. And I'm going to execute. Okay, so this is the point where I fast forward through, so it's going to be snappy. And now it is installing the shadcn UI tabs, creating the different types, the tables, and the loading, and now it's done. So pnpm dev, let's have a preview. So I'm going to come over to the browser and refresh localhost. Okay, it auto refreshes, and give this a moment, and here we are. So now let's come over to the transactions page, because that's the page that we just worked on, and we have an error. Okay guys, we are going to see the cause of this error and fix it during our code review. We have this error. Okay, so now we are going to fix this error to make sure that our code can build. It's a build error, as you can see over here. So let's copy this error message that we have here, okay, and come over to the IDE and see what's actually going on there. So even if we check the terminal, we can see more like knowledge coalescing operator. All right, it's just a syntax something. Let's add it to chat, and Cursor is going to fix it. Okay, so while it fixes it, let's go into our code review, starting from this file. We have this paginated transaction in here, and if we check where it's being used, it just is here for a type, so it's okay. I'm kind of okay with it. Let's continue to the next file. The next file we have is this transaction filter schema. So whenever we want to filter, we're going to see it in the UI by type, search, date, stuff like that. We would need a schema that looks like this. Okay, so this is okay. We want this because we're going to use it right here in this transaction action file. You would see what's going on inside of this file. Here, I'm just going to close the terminal and zoom out a bit. So over here, we have the page size, which is 20 by default. And here you see we are using the schema that we just saw. We are passing to make sure that this action is being validated against user input. If it's not successful, we return this error. And over here, we can destructure the past data. So, and also here, the user ID. So this search is coming in from the user input. If we check this transaction, oops, not here. If we go over to the transaction filter schema, you would see where we are getting these values. So the search, the date from, the date to, and that's what we are using here by the time we are done validating. Okay. And now we can say like has amount search, and then this is like our query. So where the account user ID is equals to the user ID. We also have this type, and what this syntax is saying is if type is not equal to all and that is true, we want to attach type to the query. That's what we are doing here. And the next we are doing is search. So if search is there, we want to have that or, so the or. Now we can use it in this Prisma transaction call, and over here we serialize it, like we map it. Okay, so next we have the transaction filter bar.tsx file, and this is what's going to be at the top bar of the page. Okay, so we have this error here, calling set asynchronous with an effect can trigger cascading renders. I don't even think we need this file. So what's going to happen is, nope. So I'm going to just give this over to AI. It should think of it, but I don't think it's, we need this line of code. Okay, I don't think it's something we need, because we already have the use effect at line 6 to 5. So I'm just going to have this here. Okay, and let's go through what we have. We have the bounce time 300 milliseconds, and now we have this build search string. That SP is like search params, so abbreviation there. It sets all of these to the search params here. So params.search, date from, date to, just as the server action needs it. And this component is reading the values from the search params, as you can see here, those values. And now we have the use state. We set the state if there's a search param. We have use callback because we want to memorize this action call so it doesn't get triggered on every render. So this internal action here, and it calls this build search params, and we push it over to router. You see the use effect got deleted. So use callback is going to run if one of those dependency changes. Okay. So then the use callback, sorry, is going to be triggered. Now we have use effect. I think we need this, but yeah, we actually need it. So I'm going to keep it back so we don't have that warning. And we have the ESLint disable line and the comment over here. But basically this is going to, each time the user types, we clear the timeout after waiting for a certain period of time. And this effect is going to be called on search input change. And then the X button that is going to handle clear timeouts and the JSX here. Cool. This is pretty much impressive. Let's bring in this change. You can see here, it deleted that use effect. We don't need it. And I'm kind of happy with this file. So over here, the transaction table, we have this pagination down below. Total pages is greater than 1. We want to show the pagination. And right up, we show each transaction. So the transaction table. And what else do we have here is the transaction skeleton. Pretty much straightforward. And next we have page.tsx, so the transaction page itself. You can see over here, the transaction page is going to validate if this user is authenticated. And then it like does all these things with the params. And we have an error here that type string is not assignable to type or debit credit. So we're just going to do typecasting here, which solves the problem. And what else do we have here? We show the filter bar and suspense so that we can have this. So this is pretty much okay. So the last file that we have for review is just the transaction loading.tsx file. Pretty much okay with it. And now let's go over to the browser. And here we are in the browser. We see our page, no transactions, and let's try. So click on send, it's going to update the URL. You see type debit. And even if we type into the search bar here, so I'm going to just type hello, and you're going to see it on the URL there. Okay, so that is it. And we can also add more. So I'm just going to add previous dates. It's also going to update, and also like a new date here. We're going to update, but we don't have any data to display, and we can clear the filters. So we're going to hit clear. Maybe I'm going to hit clear again just to clear everything. And it goes. All right. So we are more or less done with this. Now let's make sure that we push our changes over to Vercel. So I'm going to open up the terminal and do the usual. So clear and git add dot, add everything to staging, git commit -m with a message of, let's say, feed / transaction - complete or something like that. Data fetching and hit enter. So git push here, and quickly if we come over to Vercel, we are going to see our build in progress. All right guys, so we have been able to deploy or currently deploying our application. We are done with the transaction. We need a way of creating transactions. I'm so excited for this new phase. All right, so now we are in the bank linking with Plaid. We're going to go over to the Plaid and set up our account, so to the Plaid dashboard, okay? Because we need some environment variables that we don't have now. That we don't have now. So the client ID, the client secret, if we double check our application. And I'm just going to close all these tabs that I currently have opened and open up the env. You would see we are lacking these environment variables. So let's head over to the browser. I'm just going to search Plaid here. So you can just Google search Plaid and click on plaid.com. Now this is going to redirect you over to the platform, and you want to let it just load up. Click on the start building button right here, and it's going to take you through the onboarding process if you don't have any accounts here. So let's give this a moment. And it's asking us what do we like to use their product for. I'll just go with business or developer here and hit on continue. And now I'm going to provide my email address so that I can onboard myself here. And then I'm going to hit on continue. Okay, so I'm going to fill in this off screen just real quick here like this. And I'm going to confirm I'm not a robot and create the account. So over here on the dashboard, the first thing I'm going to do is to verify our email. So do open up your email and hit on the confirm. And once you confirm, you're going to be redirected back to the dashboard. Okay, so how do we get these API keys? You want to come over to, let's see. So under the developers section here, you're going to see the sandbox, the webhooks, APIs, and the keys. So let's click on keys. To continue, we need to set up 2FA. So I'm going to click on it. I'm going to click on the Authentication app so that I can use my mobile for this. And I'm going to enter the code that they sent to me and scan also the barcode, because it's going to show you a barcode that you can scan and add. So here is it for me. I'm just going to scan it real quick. And you also would need to verify and put in the password. And once you're done, so now if you come back to the keys, you're going to see you now have the client secret and the client secret keys. And over here in sandbox, you have the username and the password for testing. So let's come back to the keys, because we are going to make use of these keys right now in our project. So I'm going to come over to the keys section here. And I'm going to copy this so that we can add it in our project. So to make sure you copy it, and here where you have the client secret ID, with client ID, add it there, and also the client secret. Okay, so I've done both off screen. Now we are ready for to use the Plaid platform. And if you come over here, you would see where we need to continue. All right, so also add it in your Vercel environment variable. I'll see you. Okay guys, I'm super excited about this section. I've already added the Plaid client ID and the client secrets to my Vercel, and I have redeployed the application. So please do the same, okay? We're going to continue, and the next thing we need to do, if we come over to Claude AI, is episode 5, so bank linking with Plaid. And over here we have the goal, which is to connect an external bank account using Plaid Sandbox. All right, so we have the different features. So you see the Plaid link button, the create link token API route, the handle Plaid on success callback, and also send public token to the server. And then we also handle the code exchange securely on the server side. We also need to store the Plaid item, which is the access token and item ID in our database. Also store the Plaid fetch linked accounts details from Plaid, display linked bank accounts on dashboard, and just handle edge cases like if we cancel or already linked. So these are the features we need to build, and we need to copy all of these and paste them in here. And I'm just going to go over to the previous prompt. So over here, and I'm going to copy over this. So give me a cursor prompt. So I'm going to copy all of these, and then I'm going to paste it in here. Okay, so I'm going to attach one more and say also like include any user action that I need to perform in order for this to work. And then I'm going to send over the prompt. Okay, so now we're going to see Claude AI, generate the prompt that we can give over to Cursor. It does the usuals like explain our project and what has been done already. And you see also like install dependencies Plaid and React Plaid link. It says npm, but Cursor is going to like do that with pnpm. Also these envs in our local. And then we see the Plaid client setup in the library, the server actions, the different components we need, and also the manual steps that we need to go through, okay? But what's going to happen is we are going to copy this so that we can first give it to Cursor and we'll come back to take a look at the steps. So I'm going to paste it in here. And as usual, I'm not just going to paste and prompt. I'm also going to add our internal documentation. So here, I'm going to add at, I think, frontend.mdc. And I'm also going to add at database.mdc like this. And I'm also going to add the link to the Plaid documentation. So over here, Plaid docs like this. And then I'm going to send over the prompt to Cursor. Okay, so now while Cursor is working on this, let's come back here. And over here, we want to go through the manual steps. The first to create the Plaid account. We have done this already. The client ID, the sandbox secret, everything is in the env. And so we are very much covered here. Okay, so next is to configure the Plaid redirect URI. We haven't done that. And this is over in the Plaid dashboard API allow redirect URLs. Now we're going to add both, the localhost 3000 and our Vercel. It says for later, but we have it now. So copy this and back to Plaid. We need to come over to the APIs just under the development or developers section. And here where we have allow redirect URIs, let's hit on the configure button. And now we need to add new URI. So let's paste in localhost. And then let's click also on add new URI and get the SwiftSend Vercel endpoint, so our URL. And then add that over here in Plaid and save changes. Please get rid of the trailing slash. We don't need that. Okay. So go on and save changes. And it's going to prompt you to input your password. So I'm just going to do this off screen. And now I have done it. I will be going back to Claude AI. Let's see what we need to do next. Okay. So the next is the Plaid sandbox test credentials. So that's the username and the password we are going to need. And we already have this in our env, and also we have done this in our Vercel. So I'm just going to fast forward Cursor I'm just going to fast forward Cursor so that it's fast and we can continue. And just give this a moment for it to finish up. And now it has completed 5 of 5 to-dos. Pretty cool. And now that Cursor is done, it's going to list the summary of everything it has done. You can see 8 files changed, okay. But no worries, you can see it followed our rules, and that's so beautiful. The kebab case files, the Plaid secret, the access token on the server, the API routes, validate input, action, return data or error, shadcn UI, TypeScript, everything. And now pnpm run build also succeeds and everything is okay. Cool. So guys, we're going to come back, and the next thing we want to do is to try this out. So let's test it. I am super excited to test this out. I've been waiting for this for a very long time to see the account linking work in action. All right, so let's go through the code review. Let's see what we have over here. We have 8 files changes. So let's see. We're going to start with the plaid.ts file. So more like the library for Plaid. You can see over here we have the imports coming in from Plaid, and then we have the env. Otherwise, it makes use of sandbox. Okay, and from this env, it's able to construct a base path. Now, all these are used to create a new configuration. So this new configuration over here includes the base path, some base options, the headers, very important. So it has the ID and the secret. And all of these is going to be passed to the new Plaid API. So we're going to pass the configuration and get the Plaid client here. Okay, so we're going to see this often. Let's come over to the next. And over here, we have just the validation for the token exchange schema. Pretty much straightforward here. So the public token and the user ID for the action. And then we have the API route. So now this is the create link token. Okay, the button is going to make use of this. On the body, we get the user ID, and we are checking, hey, if there is no user ID, we want to try an error. Okay, so whenever we call this, you're going to see the Plaid button is always going to have the user ID. So that component to fetch this. Okay, and now we have the paid client, our Plaid client, and we call the link token create, and we pass the different variables that it needs. Okay, so the different parameters. So like the products, you see here for the products, we're passing products auth and also products transaction. In case you're not quite sure, you can hover on product and you see it's a link, is a list of Plaid products that the link must support. So here we pass auth and also transactions. We also have the language and the country code. Okay, and now we return the response. Okay, so let's continue. The response is the link token, so let's have that in mind. So we're going to go on and review the next file. And this next file is another API route, which is going to help for the exchange token. So in here, what's going on? Let's see. Yeah, so we have the post, so it's going to return to post request. We're passing the incoming request. Remember the validation that we saw. If there is no success, we return a response, an error response to the client. And then it uses our paid client. So over here from the lib, and then it calls item public token exchange. So it exchanges this and we get the response. So from that response, we'll be able to get the access token as well as the item ID. And we can use the access token to get the access token from the as part of the response. So for the item response here. And then we get the institution ID. And now we just go on to do the get the institution by the ID, and we store the response here on line 45 because we are going to use that response to create a Plaid item in the Prisma transaction. So it's important to know we are doing all of these in a transaction. The response is going to be a list. So we need to loop through each account and create accounts, and link them up there. So that's what we are doing here. And the next file is the Plaid action. So this is our server action. Get Plaid link accounts. So this is where we go on to call prisma.plaiditem.findMany. We want to get the linked account, and then we push it over to a results array that we define at line 26 over there, or that cursor defined at line 26. And now we would no longer have to manually get the accounts on the page. So this is the Plaid button I was telling you about here. And let's take a look at this. It takes in the user ID and all those props. And over here in use effect, it calls that API route. So to create the link token that we need to click on to, do the linking. So this is API route over here. And what else? We have the response, we pass it, response JSON. And that's pretty much what's going on here. It sets the link token in local state. And now on success, we have the on success callback. So we use callback, and then we call the exchange token. And the on success is going to be passed to this hook. So the use Plaid link hook. So that's a React hook from Plaid React. And if we go over to the definition, you're going to see this is coming from React Plaid link. Okay. Then we get open and ready, and we do some disabled. If it's loading, we show a spinner, and that's it. So now the link account strip, this has also been updated to make use of the action. So here it's going to get the linked account from props, and if there's no linked account, it's just going to show the link button. Remember the button that we just saw now. And then we format the currency. If we have link accounts, we want to go on and map and display all the linked accounts which is coming in from the props. And the last file here is the page.tsx. Pretty much straightforward. Now we are no longer making use of accounts because we have linked accounts, okay? And we are passing the linked account to the linked account strip. So we no longer have to like do this manually. So I'm just going to like, rather than have to remove this on my own, I'm just going to let Cursor to determine that we are not making use of these accounts here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy it or highlight all of them actually and add them to chat. So I'm going to ask it, don't we need the accounts anymore? Something like that. And send it. So this is to give it the opportunity to go on and remove it itself, just to be sure, but I know we're no longer using it. So it has removed it. You see, it makes use of get linked account, which is at line 37. So I'm going to accept this change. And now we use get link account. We get the linked results and all of that. Okay, so this is the moment where we need to test things. So I'll clear and npm dev so that we can try it out on our machine. So come over to localhost and just refresh your dashboard. And now you see it spinning. So it's that link button that is going to fetch the URL for us that we can use to link our accounts. And if you come over here, you see it was for calling the API route. So the create link token, it was successful. Now we see the connect bank account. So we have the link that we can use to connect with. Let's click on the button. And now you see it brings up the connection modal. We can use the phone number down there. You can see it, you're currently on Sandbox. But for now, I'm going to continue without phone number. And we need an institution. So over here, you want to go on and search for Plaid because you want to use the Sandbox. So search for Plaid here and hit enter. And you can see heroku.com. Just click on any of the results there. And the username, if you come over to the Plaid dashboard, you're going to see the username that we can use to connect. So here under the Sandbox, you're going to see the username is usergood and the password is passgood. So come back to the application and paste this in. Same for the password. You want to copy this and paste in the password here and passgood. Hit on submit. Now we see our accounts. So the dummy account in the Sandbox that we can use for testing. Pretty much cool. And we can hit on continue and it's going to connect this bank account to, and you see it's successful. Now we can, finish without saving. We don't want to use any phone number here, at least for now. So what I'm going to do is finish without saving. And now it's compiling. It needs to go on and save this in our database. Okay, so let's give this a moment and we're going to see it's successful. And actually it failed. Okay, it's actually in a transaction. So let's come back to the code base and see if we have some timeout. So it says unable to start a transaction in the given time. So, it's not able to start a transaction and it's timing out. So what we're going to do, I'm going to copy all of these and let Cursor fix it. I'm sure it's going to figure it out. So I'll just hit enter here. And you see, it kind of did the transaction, added it in a timeout for 2000 milliseconds. So this route, that's what it has done, so that it has like more time to wait for completion. Okay, so now let's come back here and let's connect the bank account again. Give this a moment and I'm going to continue without phone number again. And I'll just search for Plaid right in here and hit enter. And this, the username, let's grab the username usergood and paste it here. And the password is also pass_good. Submit. Okay, now we're going to try, and this time around this should be successful. So we see the account. We're going to hit on continue. Give this a moment. Success. And finish without saving. And now it should be successful. Fingers crossed. and it failed to link. Okay, so what's going to happen is we're not going to spend so much time trying to debug this. We're going to hand this over to Cursor to Cloud and let Cloud do the thinking for us. We are going to fix this bug together now so that you can see the trust process and not trust process, the thought process and how we fix this. So I'm going to copy the bug that we have here and then come over to Cloud. I want to give it as much information. So I'm going to tell it that we are currently having this error. So we currently have this error and you want to paste it here. And you can also say this is the API route. So I'm going to copy everything from the exchange token API route where we currently face the error. So you want to take everything, give it as much information, and then you also want to tell it what you have done. So you can say, so far we added the timeout, okay, but error persists. And now let's copy the timeout and let's show it the code we have added here, just like this. Okay. And now we send it. So let's give it some time. And it's going to say it's, okay, so this is a Supabase connection issue. And it's like pointing to our env because it's trying to connect via a database URL. Now, but this is our setup. So it's saying like the ports we should use. So 5432. If we check our application, so I'm just going to come over to our application so that I can, give it the credentials we use currently. Because what it's suggesting is what we are currently doing. So I'm going to copy this and I'm going to paste it here. Like we already have this, but we should tell it that this is because of Prisma version 7. We cannot make use of the database URL. Okay, so via this, now you want to copy your database URL here and also give it the Prisma file. So over here, I'm going to search for the Prisma in the lib. So I'm going to take this and pass it here. And you also want to give it the Prisma config. So let it just have a feel for the code base. So you say, and we have the Prisma config here. And then I'm going to search for the config and paste it there. So what it's suggesting, it's using the database URL. And we cannot go on to make use of the direct URL because if we make use of the direct URL, we are going to be using it for every connection. So that's why we make use of database URL. So what it's suggesting is that we need to use the direct URL and you say we should change it to this. But this isn't appropriate, okay? Because if we change it to make use of direct URL, every other connection in our application is going to make use of direct URL. So you see for the normal queries, it says we should make use of database URL. For transactions, we should use direct URL. So I'm going to reply it here and say, if we do this, if we change this, so this is the database URL, normal queries are also going to make use of direct URL like this. So that isn't going to work. So now let's see what it's going to suggest that we do. And here it acknowledges that we are right. So it's saying we no longer need to use the Prisma transaction. So in this case, we can go on to make use of, a sequential call where we wait for each. So we can do this, or we can use the promise.all, but this is just a demo application. So I'm going to copy everything here and I'm going to give it over to Cursor so that Cursor can go on to fix the application based up of this recommendation. So over here in the chat, I'm going to paste it and it already has the comments and I'm going to send it over to Cursor and then fast forward through so that Cursor goes on to, fix it. Okay. And now it has fixed it. So it's no longer making use of the transaction, which was making use of database connection. And now this is what we have. Cool. Okay. So now with this fixed, we can go on to, test the application. So pnpm dev, and let's try to link our account from Plaid. So let's come back to our local host 3000 and just refresh. And it is getting the link URL. So the button is currently loading and now connect back account. So I'm going to click on it and it brings us back to the modal for connection. Yes. And again, I'm going to continue without phone number here. And now we need to search for Plaid in here and send. And I'm going to choose this first one here. And the username, if we check the sandbox, user good, and the password is passgood. So here I'm going to paste in the user good, and same for this, and hit on submit. Cool. So now we just need to hit on continue, and fingers crossed everything should work. Now we are not making use of the transaction. I'm going to finish this without saving, so I don't use any phone number, and we should get our success message. Give this some, and now our bank account has been linked successfully. We're going to have them displayed here, and now we see the 3 bank accounts linked. So the Plaid checking, the Plaid savings, and the cash management. Super cool. You see the dashboard, our total balance also like improved. We can even go on to like add another account if we want to like link more, but in this case I'm just going to cancel this. So I'll say yes, exit, and you see our balance is now at 12,000. Okay, so this is pretty much good. I like the progress we have made. Let's see how we can now connect Stripe with this. We have a win. Let's push what we have done over to Vercel. So I'm going to open up the terminal and run the following command. So git add dot like this to add everything, and git commit -m, and then I'm going to say payment with Plaid. So not like that, Plaid like this, and send this off. Okay, so sorry, -m, just like this. All right, so we have this now, git push, so that we can push all the work we have done to GitHub, and it's going to trigger a Vercel build. So we come over to the Vercel and the build and deployment section over here. Actually not build and deployment. So let's go back and over to the deployments section. We are going to see a new deployment is currently building up. Now while that's building, let's come over to Claude AI, and we are currently at this section. So episode 6, yeah. And this is the goal. So users should be able to send money to other SwiftSend users. So Stripe is going to help us handle the payment logic. For the features, we have the transfer from, the recipient's lookup, transfer confirmation, Stripe payment, and all of these features. So you know the drill. We're going to take all of these and give it to Claude AI. And I'm going to just scroll up to where we had a previous prompt so that I can copy the remainder of the prompt where we tell it to also include any user action, because now this is a third-party API, and send. So here is the Cursor prompt. Definitely we need to go through the prompt. We need to scan it before we take it over to Cursor for the implementation. And let's go through it. This is what's done. The different dependencies, it says npm, but we know it's pnpm that we use. Here we have the Stripe client set up. Cool. The Zod schema, the server action, and I actually don't like this step 3 over here. Yeah, so I don't like this. It's also making use of the Prisma transaction, which was the error we had from previous. It says direct error. So I'm going to reply to it here, and then I'm going to tell it, please, we cannot use or make use of direct underscore URL here. So I'm going to tell it this, so it like gives us an updated code. So let's wait for it. And now it says we're going to use a batch array syntax. Cool. So now let's scroll down, and this is what the code is going to look like. Okay. So now we want it to like give us an updated prompt that we can just feed into Claude at once. So let's tell it to do that. Please output the complete code like this. The complete updated code. Oops, actually meant prompt. So let's update it from code to prompt here and send this over. So now Claude AI is going to update the prompt for episode 6. And this is what's already done. The dependencies installation, the Stripe client setup, all of these are what all we want to do. And you see it's now correct to make use of batch array syntax only. We can continue to go through the prompts and pages and components, the accounts and notes. Yeah, everything actually looks okay. So I'm going to go up and copy it. And then I'm going to come back to the IDE so that we can give this to Cursor, paste it here, and definitely want to add our own internal documentation. So we're going to say at front end MDC. So let me fix the typo. So front end.mdc. We also want to call at database.mdc and the documentation. So let's go to doc. So at doc and then select Prisma docs. And we also want to make sure we attach the Stripe docs. So at docs, and we are going to select Stripe. And now we can prompt Cursor. Now while Cursor is generating the code, let's now set up our Stripe account. So that's what we need to do. We need to set up the publishable key and the secret key. All right, so we're going to get that from the developers API. So let's come over to Stripe and over to the settings gear icon at the top right there. We want to go over to developers, and in developers, if you click manage API keys, you're going to see the API keys. So I'm going to do this off screen. So I have transferred the keys quickly off screen. So please take the keys. And this is the test card. And we also need to enable Stripe. Over to business and bank account and currencies. Over here, we have the opportunity. Yeah, you see currency USD is already here. Cool. All right, since we have the currency here already, let's come back to Cloud. And the next thing we need to do is to add this in Vercel. Please, I'm also going to do this off screen. So please just do it. I'm trying to protect the keys over here. So come over to your Vercel. I have added them already and I'm going to trigger a redeploy. So add it to your envs, to your code base, and also to Vercel. Okay. And now we have them added. I think we're pretty much done with the setup. I'm just going to fast forward this quickly. And now I'm going to say pnpm install so that it can install the different dependencies, also the Stripe clients, and all of these. This is what is done. It followed our convention, Stripe, no self-transfer, and also the loading and toast success error. And after we run pnpm install, we also need to run npm run build. So these are commands I'm going to run off screen just to save your time, and then we can come back to it. The build failed for me, and it's not an error that we are not unfamiliar with. So the error that has happened earlier in this course. So I'm gonna give it to Cursor for it to to fix it, to make use of our custom resolver. So I'm gonna add this to chat here and send this, and now we can review the code that we have. So let's start with this, the package.json. We just have the different dependencies that was installed. So we have Stripe, also we have Stripe.js, and we have Stripe React.js. So the next one here is this stripe.ts file. And why do we have this error? The API version 2024-06-20. Okay, let's bring it in and let's inspect why we have the error. And over here, okay, so it wants us to make use of this type, so 2025-02-24. So I'm going to copy that, and if the error persists, then I'll add the ACACIA. So I'm going to use this, like this, and now the error is gone. So the next is the transfer validation. So this is the schema that we are going to use whenever we want to initiate a transfer, the recipient schema, the transfer schema, and also the create transfer schema. Okay, so everything here is very much okay. We have the receiver ID and the rest. The next now is the transfer action, which is going to make use of the schema. So let's go through it. We have different functions here. I'm just going to go on and collapse all of those so that all of the functions so that we can go through each and every one of them. So I'm just going to collapse all these functions and types that we have here. Now let's start with the recipient. This is the type for the recipient. So how a recipient is going to look like. And here we go on to pass validate. So we're doing the server-side validation. We get the user from our database. We throw an error or we return if there is no user. And then we return the subject. Okay, lookup recipient, pretty much straightforward. Now get sender balance. This also is looking for the account where the sender ID matches. If there's no account, you return data 0 like this. But if there's an account, we pass the account number, with the number constructor. Now we have create transfer. We call transfer schema.savePass, where we give and if there's an error, we return the error, and now we can destructure. So if the sender ID is equal to the receiver ID, we can definitely not send money to ourselves. And we go on to get the sender ID from the database, some validation, and also the receiver account. Okay, so over here, we now do a payment intent from Stripe. So we create a payment intent. You can see over there in line 104 that we are updating the payment intent with that payment intent ID. Okay, so with all of these, we have the transfer ID. We then have a Prisma transaction block where we update the account, so the sender account, and we also go on to increment the receiver account. We create a transfer with a status of completed, and we now create a transaction with debit. So now the creator is going to have, the sender is going to have a debit, and the receiver is going to have a credit alert notification here. And this is the last type we have, transfer with details, pretty much straightforward. And now get transfer by ID is this Prisma transfer.findUnique, where it's like the sender, the receiver, the transaction, and return the object. So next, recipient lookup component. Let's see what's going on here. So we have the props, we set some state values, we have the form that is being registered there, and we have the on submit that is being called. Okay, so let's see if everything is okay here. We get the result. This is calling the lookup recipient action, and it's passing the email. And now we just have the JSX. So here, enter the name of the person you want to send the money to. We also go on to display the avatar and also the button to continue on found recipient, or on recipient found. We pass the recipient over to this function, which comes in as props. Now the next file we have is this transfer form. Okay, so this transfer form, we have a warning here. Let's take a look at it. Compilation skipped. Use of incompatible library. So rather than make use of watch, I think it's meant to make use of use watch or not watch. So what's going to happen is I'm just going to let Cursor fix this. I know it should make use of watch and not use watch, sorry, and not watch. So I'm going to add this and then paste in the error message. So now while it fixes that, we can continue taking a look at this component. So these are the props: sender ID, recipient, on next, on back. And what else do we have? We have this use effect that calls get sender balance. So once it loads, it gets my balance over here, whoever is initiating the transfer. And then it sets the state with the balance. Okay. And now on submit, it calls on next. And you see over here, we have all these inputs that are hidden. Okay. So the sender ID, the receiver ID, as well as the currency, they're all hidden. They're going to be sent over to the server action. We have the label, and what else? We have if balance is equal to null. We want to do this, and also errors.amount, and all of this, and also if the use creator exceeds their balance. All right, let's continue. Let's see. I think everything here is pretty much okay. Now it's actually done. So let's keep the file. Yeah, it makes use of the use watch. Pretty much cool. Now over here we have the transfer confirm. So for you to confirm, which is the third step in the transaction, We have handle confirm, which is now going to call create transfer and pass the different field values. And what else? Now we just have the JSX, which shows the sender first name, the sender last name. It shows the different details so that you can go on and confirm and send. Now we have the transfer flow. So we have 3 flows in this transfer. The first is the step where you can enter the recipient by email. And the second step is where you go on to enter the amount. And then the third step is where you go on to confirm the transfer. So now you have the transfer page.tsx, and this is where you now render the transfer flow and all of these, okay, validation here. So let's go back to the next file. This next file is just for the success. So when we have a successful transfer, we go on to display this file over here, and actually that's pretty much it. So let's check if the build passes again. So we have gone through the code that AI generated for us, and then we are going to go on and initiate the transfer, but we need to create another account because it's going to be to someone else. The build passed for me, okay? So now I'm just going to clear and run the dev server so we can try it out. Okay, so pnpm dev like this, which is going to spin up the development server. Actually, I think we should run the build. So let's go with pnpm start. I think it's a little bit faster. All right, so over here in the browser, I have 2 separate applications. I'm going to spin them up. So on the left is the application we've been working with, and on the right is the new application which I registered with test1, okay? Because we need to transfer money to another user. And this over here is the Bright application, and this is the test. Okay. So what do we do now? You can see this has the accounts, but this don't have any account yet. So we need to connect accounts that we're going to transfer the money to. Because of this logic, if we come over to the transfer page, you would see the transfer flow on the 3rd step, where the user confirms the transfer. That is where the money is being sent. So you see this create transfer action here on line 96. If there is no receiver account, it's not going to work. So for that, we need to create account for this, because the only account we have belongs, so the 3 accounts we have belongs to this other user here. So these 3 accounts. All right, so let's go on and connect our own account for this user so that this user can then transfer money to the first account that this user owns. So that's the logic we have currently, okay? So over here, I'm going to hit connect bank account and go through the flow, continue without phone number. And for the username, I'm going to copy the user good and just search for Plaid over here. Okay, so username, user good, and password is pass_good. And hit on submit. And now we see the 3 accounts just like this other user. I'm going to hit on continue. Give this a moment, and success. Okay. Now I'm going to finish without saving, and then you're going to see our toast notification. Give this a moment. Yes, so here's our toast notification, and then we're also going to see the 3 accounts appear here. Cool. So now this user has the account to transfer money to. It's more or less the same account as this other user because that was the option we chose. All right, so let's come over to transfer money page, and over here we're going to come over to the transactions page so that we can see both. And I'm going to take this user email test1@mail.com and find user, and then it finds this user here, and then I'm going to say transfer. I'm just going to transfer, let's say 1,000. And for the notes, maybe hello, and the review transfer. So we see the details, confirm transfer. And now this user transaction history. So you see transfer successful. We get the success page. Everything is okay. So this is the success page, how much was sent, the transaction ID, the date and time, the notes. So now if we refresh here, you would see over here now, this now has a credit transaction that was completed is in green. And we have the transfer from, so you can update that to show like the username and stuff like that rather than just have this string over here. I think that's a good user experience. And for this other side, we see the transfer to, because it's a debit. And you can also try the filter. So if we come over to received, you would see received is here. If we come over to sent, we would not see any transaction. And over here, if we come over to received, we would not see any transaction. So our filter is working, as expected, and we can clear the filter for both users. This is lovely. Okay, so now we are sure the application is working. We're going to come back and focus on the last step of the build. We have a bug in our Stripe logic. So now create transfer function. So for now, I just, prompted Cloud with the function that handles the transfer. And the bug is currently we are creating a Stripe payment intent. And that leaves us with an incomplete transfer. So because we create an intent and then in the Stripe dashboard, we see this customer has not entered their payment method. Let's come over to Stripe and you would see what I mean. So over here, you see we have this incomplete transfer. Rather than making use of Stripe intent, these are the options that Cloud is recommending that we get rid of Stripe, or we can use Stripe charge instead. And that's what we are going to do. So this is pretty much straightforward, no hassle here. So I'm going to copy this and then I'm going to come over to Cloud and tell it give me the cursor prompt for this implementation. So now we are going to stop using the Stripe intent and then just create a charge immediately. Okay, so it's pretty much straightforward. We just need to update maybe 2 blocks of code. We need to replace this which creates the Stripe intent to this which creates the Stripe charge. And then we're going to update our Stripe payment ID. So it's a straightforward fix. Then we can copy this, come over to Cursor and paste it here. That's all we need to do. So while the fix is going on, I'm going to keep the 2 browsers side by side so that we can be able to test this out. And then I'm going to come over to localhost 3000 and come back to Cursor. So the Cursor build is done. Let's take a look at what it did. So you see here, just replace the payment intent to charge and the source, the description, and also the transfer payment ID. Now let's run our dev server. So pnpm dev to start up the development server. And then I'm going to refresh both platforms so that we can try another transfer and see it update correctly in Stripe. All right, so it's done. I'm going to come over to the transfer money page for this. And over here, I'm going to copy this user email. So I'm just going to get rid of this, copy this user email and paste it right in here and find the user. Now we see the user. I will hit on continue. The amount, I'll just go with $300. And for the notes, I'll just say hello and review the transfer, confirm and send. Now let's come over to the transactions page for this user. We see transfer successful. We see the success page. Now let's see the transactions page. And now we see over here, if we come to Stripe, let's refresh our page. And now the idea is for us to see a successful charge because we are no longer creating an intent, we are creating a charge. So the user don't need to provide their card details. And here you see it succeeded, and you can get more details by clicking into that specific transaction. And we see that everything works fine with the description and all. Cool. So now we have been able to go on to fix this issue we had. The next thing we need to work on now is the last episode of this course. I know we have some bugs to fix. Definitely we are going to be fixing them. We're going to get started with the profile page implementation. And this is episode what? Episode 7 here. So profile and settings. Now the goal of this episode is to have a complete profile management page so you can learn Zod validation, password flows, and stuff like that. So let's copy over the specification, and then I'm going to just paste it in before I go on to prompt cursor to generate the generate the cursor prompt for this. Let me update this. So generate the entire cursor prompt implementation for this. Also output any user actions needed for this to work like this, and then I'm going to send this over. All right, so Cloud is going to generate the prompt that we need to feed over to Cursor, and as always, we want to go through the prompt to make sure that it follows our project standard. And if we come over here, you see the update avatar action is going to be calling the avatar from the Supabase bucket. So we don't have this yet in our Supabase. It's something I'm sure the Cloud output is also going to point out that we need to implement. So we're going to implement the profile page, and also we're going to have some components here, the password form, the delete account dialog. And now we have the different rules that Cursor would need to follow. Let's copy this first, and then we're going to come over to the IDE. Before I prompt Cursor, I just want to commit what we have done to GitHub. So I'm going to clear and say git add dot, and then git commit -m, and then I can say maybe stripe feed /stripe transfers, and then git push. Okay. So now over here, I'm just going to paste in the prompt and execute. Okay, so now while Cursor is generating the code, let's come over to the manual steps we need to implement. We need to create this bucket over in Supabase, so avatars bucket. And over in the Supabase project, we need to come over to the side navigation bar where we have storage. So over here where we have storage, just give this a moment, we need to create a new file bucket. So here, the name is avatars with an S, and it's going to be a public bucket just to make things easier for us. I'm not going to restrict the file size or the MIME types, all those things. So this is the avatar bucket. And now let's see what we have to do next. How did this come over into the inputs? Let me just delete this, please. Okay, so next we need to set storage policies for this to work, because we need some policy on every bucket. Now I'm going to make this easy for us so we don't have to type out all this with check and creating policies. So we're just going to allow everything. Okay, so let's do that. Let's come over to the Supabase storage and just come one level back to buckets. And over here, we need to come to the policies tab and create a new policy on the avatar bucket. I'm going to select for full customization over here, and then I'm going to give this policy a name. Let's say something like allow all, something like this. And then I'm going to select, insert, update, delete. And if you want this to have some target rows, you can also update this here, but I'm going to allow it to default to all public rows, review, and then save the policy. So now we have the policy on this bucket here. If we come back here, let's see what next we have to do. We also need the Supabase service role key. All right, so let's generate this key. You can see here we don't need to expose it to Git, so that's the key we need, and we can get this from Supabase. So let's come over to Supabase, and maybe on this connect tab under API keys, maybe we'll see it there. Nope. All right, so let's come over to project settings, and in project settings we have API keys, and we have the legacy, anonymous, and service role API keys. So let's review this key and copy this. Now we need to add this to our project. So I'm going to do this off screen. I have added it to my project, so please add it. Now let's add it in Vercel. So I'll come over to the Vercel, and over here in Vercel settings, we want to come over to the environment variables, and then let's add a new variable. So I'm going to copy the key, so the Supabase service role key, and add environment variable, and I will paste the key here. So for the value, we can get the value here again. So copy this and add the value here. Then you want to save and redeploy. So let's redeploy after this change. And the next thing we want to do is to come over to deployments. So over here in the deployments tab, we can see the deployment is currently ongoing. The last build succeeded. And let's see, we don't have to do any other thing. Cool. So we have added it to Vercel and stuff. So now let's come back to the project, and we're going to give Cursor some time to go on and generate the different files. And as usual, we are going to walk through the files that Cursor has generated before we continue. All right, guys, so let's review the code that we got from Cursor. We have 11 files changed. I'm going to start with this validation. It's pretty much straightforward. So over here, we have the update profile schema, so the first name and the last name. And we also have the change password schema, because the user would have to provide the current password, the new password, and also confirm. I'm just going to update this to 6 so that it can, be in sync with what we have currently. And that's pretty much it, the changes in this file. So let's go back to the next file. And now this is the Supabase admin. So in case a user wants to delete their account, it makes use of the Supabase URL and the Supabase service role key. And next we have the user actions. So I'm going to bring this in. Now we have the allowed avatar MIME types. So the image and also the size. So 2 MB maximum. And then we have the get current user, which was updated to select the email, the first name, the last name, the avatar URL, all of these. If there is no user, we return null. And now we have, the object has also been updated. We have this one, which is new, update profile. It goes on to do the validation to make sure that what it's receiving from the client is what it needs. And then it runs the Prisma update. So now we also have the update avatar action. It returns data and success. So we also have validation in place for the MIME types, for the size. We create the path. So this is the path where to be stored in Supabase. And from the avatars bucket, we go on to upload. And once we are done with the upload and there are no errors, we get the public URL from this path that we defined at line 100, okay? This public URL is what we then use to update the user profile. And lastly, we have the change password, which takes the current password, the new password, the confirmed password. It does the validation as others, and we have an error here. So after it calls the Supabase auth to update the user password, okay? Now the error here is based on data, and let's fix it. We just need to return data from here, and the error is fixed. Actually, we already also have the delete account. So the delete account is going to call delete many, so in a Prisma transaction, and then it's going to delete the transfers of the user account, the Plaid item, and also delete the user. So it's going to run all of these. Then it's going to sign out the user. Now all these are just components from shadcn UI, so we can skip through them. Alert dialog component, also from shadcn UI, the avatar component from shadcn UI, and next we have the profile avatar. Okay, so now this is a costume component. Let's get rid of this toast from Sona, which is not used in this file. We have the allowed MIME types defined on top. We have get initials function, and here we have some states. And over here we have the use server action that calls the update avatar action. And here we have the handle file change. It retrieves the file from the event target. So it gets the file from there. And if there's no file we want to return, it updates the state. And it now sets the selected file in state. Now when we want to save, it checks if there is no file in state because it saves it, then we want to return. But if there is a file, then it goes on to append the file to a new form data and calls execute on it. Okay, so that's pretty much what's going on here. And this update avatar function is going to return this object. Let's just verify, okay? So where do we have it? That the avatar object is part of what is returned from here. Yes, so it returns data which is of this type, avatar public URL. Cool. Avatar which is data which is an object, sorry. And what else do we need? We have the handle cancel. So if the user cancels the upload, it just revokes the URL object from the state. And I think that's pretty much what's going on here. Let's see this. Yeah, I think I'm okay with that. And we have the display URL which comes from the preview or which comes from the avatar URL. And if there's a display URL, it displays it in the avatar component. And that's the entire JSX. So next we have the profile form. Okay, so let's see what's going on in this profile form. This profile form, we have an error here. We also need to add data here. So let's update this. So let's update this update profile and make sure we have at promise, which is also going to return data here, so we don't have the error anymore. And here let's just return data true. So the avatar form is now we build the form with use form, and then we call on submit over here, and we have the JSX for the profile form. Pretty much straightforward. We can't change email, that's okay. And the password form, let's see this password form. We have these props we are not using. I don't know why it kept that around. So what we're going to do, we're going to get rid of these props that we don't need here. So I'm going to remove the props definition and also the interface definition here. All right, so then we can continue. Let's see what next. We have the current form, new form. So like the form definition, and we have the on submit, and we have the JSX, where the user can provide a new password, the password strength. I think we should take a look at this password strength and know how it works. So this schema, okay, it makes use of 6 characters. That is very much okay. I just want to be sure that we are using 6 characters or numbers everywhere. Okay, so this strength, how does it work? Okay, it's a variable which is defined from get password strength, and get password strength is checking if the password.length is less than 8. So let's also update that to 6. All right, and that's pretty much the update for here. We can now have a look at this delete account dialog. Also, this is missing data, so let's make sure we have data here, and that's about it. All right, so let's come back to the delete account dialog, and here we have the confirm text equal to delete. I think the user would have to type that in at some point. So here, confirm text, so delete. And next we have this page.tsx, and this page.tsx, bring it in, is just going on to display like the different components we have seen. So the profile avatar and the different forms. All right, cool. So we have gone through the review. The next thing we are going to do is to now test all of these out to make sure a user can upload avatar and can also update their password. Okay, so now let's go on and test this profile, the code that we have brought in. So npm dev, make sure you have your development server up and running. And let's come over to localhost and give this a refresh. Okay, so let's go back to the dashboard from here. Let's just be sure this link works, and it works. The next thing I want to do is to come over to the profile page, but this is the page we just worked on. Okay, so what are the changes here? We will need to change our photo. I'm going to just pick this from my file picker, and then I'm going to hit on save photo so that we can confirm that the profile picture upload actually works. And we see updated. It's also updates here. Let's check Supabase. Over here in Supabase, if we come over to the storage and click on the avatar bucket, we should see this and then the avatar image. And this was the avatar that I actually uploaded. Super cool. The next thing we're going to test is the profile information updates. I'm just going to change the name from, let's say, Bright to Larry over here. And I'll just leave the last name and hit on save. So we'll also give this a moment. And we see profile updated. Super cool. Now let's test the password. I'm going to provide my current password. So 126. This is the current. Actually, I'm going to change it to the wrong one. So let's say 7, just to be sure that it works. And then also provide 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 as the new password, update password. Now, I actually expected to get an error, but now we caught a bug. Okay, so the current password, it doesn't matter. You just provide something. That's not how it should work in a real application. Let's sign out and see if signing in works with this new password. So I'm going to provide, I'll just paste it in here. First, my email test@test.com, and then I'm going to paste in the 127 password here. We get our good old something went wrong, and then we get navigated to the dashboard. So updating the password works. What isn't working is the fact that we need to, if we come to the profile page, we don't need to provide the current password to be able to update it. Okay, so that's a bug. We are going to use the next video to fix all the bugs and also test our application live. I also noticed the bug in the dashboard. And this is about responsiveness. So if I make this responsive, you see we have this overflow here. And that's because the linked account causes this overflow and also the recent transactions. So we need to fix all of these now. Okay, so now we are going to fix the bug. I have already prepared the prompt here. So kindly generate the cursor prompt for these 4 bugs. Now, when a user logs in, because Next.js throws a special error, when we redirect, we get redirected with those notifications that something went wrong. And then you want to provide it with enough context as possible. So let me update this. So over here, I gave it the server action, so the sign up action, and I also gave it the sign up page, so the page that calls the action. I know the problem comes from that use server action, so I also gave it like the use server action. And this is where the toast comes in and where we see the toasts, okay? Because here's the catch block that goes on to throw the error, so the if block. All right, so that's it for this bug. And the next bug is the auth layout. So an authenticated user can visit the auth pages. This is pretty an easy fix because in this auth layout, we are not checking, okay, if a user is authenticated. Now this next one, the dashboard is not responsive. You want to give it an idea when this happens, and I also give it the linked accounts played. So this is where we have the bug. And lastly, when a user is updating a password and the user provides a wrong correct password, it also gets updated. So I gave it the action, and over here you see we are not doing any password check. Go on and prompt it. Now Cloud is going to go on and generate the prompt for us, and once it is done, we can now go through and see what it has generated. So let's start with this bug number 1. It clearly identifies the problem, and now it has the fix. So in the catch block, this is where we are having the fix, and it's saying we should replace it with this check that if it's a redirect error, we should throw the error. So once we throw it, Next.js is going to handle it because Next.js knows the error. Okay, and then the next thing is authenticated users can visit the auth page. Okay, and this is an easy fix. Just go on and over here add this session check. So if there's a session, we should go on to redirect the user to the dashboard page. Pretty much straightforward. Do not update any JSX here. And the next is the dashboard not responsive with linked accounts. So it identifies that we're using an autoflow x auto. It should go on and replace that. So it's like the fix for actual each line of code over here that makes it responsive. And the most serious one, we have a wrong current password still updates successfully. Okay, so we are not checking if the current password before we update it. So it says what we're going to do, re-authenticate the user, and if there's an error during signing in the user, then we are going to return an error. Otherwise, do go on and update. So everything is cool. We are going to copy this and come over to the IDE and paste the prompt here and execute. Okay, so Cursor is then going to go on and generate the fix for us. And once Cursor is done generating the fix, again, we can then review and push everything to the live URL. We're going to test that everything is okay, deploy the application, and that's going to be it. Hello. So I'm super excited. Let's go on and verify the fix for all 4 bugs, starting with the user action. Now, the issue we had here previously was the fact that if a user tries to change their password, so by calling the change password action, we just allow them even if they provide a wrong correct password. Now, this line over here fixes it. So we try to sign in with password, and if for some reason it fails, then we throw the error. But if it passes, then we can go on to update the user. This looks like it's fixed. Now, the next we have is the use server action. The problem here was whenever we sign in and Next.js throws the redirect error, we always show something went wrong. Now, if it's a redirect error, we just rethrow it and Next.js goes on to handle it, which is the redirect. Now, this is the layout. Again, this was a straightforward fix. We just get the session from Supabase and redirect the user to the dashboard. And lastly, the responsiveness. Okay, so now we can only test this by starting up the development server and then coming over to the browser to see how it works. So do come over to localhost 3000 and let's be able to verify all 4 fixes. I'll just give this a moment for it to load up. And so here we have the dashboard. So what do we go on to test first? I think we should test the responsiveness. Okay, so for that, I'm going to open up the console and I still see this overflow. So sometimes we can just, and toggle it back in. And this is how it looks. Now, my gut feeling is if we have more accounts, it's still going to overflow. But for this, I'm just going to, allow it slide and let's move on. Okay. It's just a CSS issue. I'm going to, just move on with this. And the next thing we should try is to visit one of the authentication pages. So I'm going to go over to sign up and we should be redirected back to the dashboard. And we are redirected over to the dashboard. Super cool. Now let's sign out and see if we still see the toast notification. I'm going to provide my email. So test@test.com. And I'm going to provide my password. So 123457 and sign in. And you see we no longer get the toast notification and we are redirected. Cool. Now the last one is the change password in the profile page. So over here, I'm going to provide the password. So 123456. So this is a wrong password. And I'm going to provide the password 126 like this. So update password. And we see current password is incorrect. Cool. So now I'll provide the correct password and update. And we should get our sources. Cool. So we have been able to verify that all works. Now it's time for us to, push our changes over to Vercel. So let's do that. Git add dot git commit -m, maybe bug fixes. So over here, bug fixes. And lastly, git push. So now we are going to push over and have Vercel trigger a redeploy. Let's not forget to update our Supabase. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to copy our project URL and then come over to the Supabase project. Under authentication, we have the URL configuration. We want to now use our live URL since we are done with the build. Actually, that is this site URL here. Remove the trailing slash and save changes. We're just giving Vercel some time to go on and build. So now let's monitor the build in the Vercel dashboard. We can see a new deployment is currently in process. From the look of things, it looks like on average 45 seconds the build completes. So let's give this a little moment for it to complete. Then we can go over to the live URL and also test our fixes over there. So now it is complete. Let's come over to the live URL and start by giving this a refresh. Okay. So we are signed out. Let's sign in. So test@test.com. Provide password, maybe a wrong password. Sign in and invalid email or password. So let me fix it. Invalid email or password. So now let me provide the correct password. Click on sign in and we are redirected over to the dashboard. Cool. So let me get rid of this. And the next one I want to test is, let's say we come over to the profile, try to change our first name. So Larry Bright, and then I'm going to save changes, and you see profile updated, and everything works as expected. So thank you, congratulations, you have been able to go with me all through the build. I'll see you soon, maybe in future builds. Please do stay connected, it means a lot. Until then, bye.